So let's move on into the webinar itself. I'd like to welcome you to this TCME webinar entitled Resolve to Make Mindful Eating Work for You and Your Clients with Jean Fain, MSW, LICSW. As I said, my name is Stephen. I'll be your host today. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we begin, I would like to briefly give you some background about the Center for Mindful Eating. TCME was created for professionals who want to learn about the value of mindfulness and mindful eating. The Center for Mindful Eating does not promote or advocate one single approach to mindful eating. Rather, we are committed to sharing ideas and practices, clinical experience, and research. While this is not a members-only program, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank those of you who are members for your support and membership. Without you, we wouldn't be here. We have numerous resources available to you on our website, including a full archive of talks, publications, networking opportunities, and more. If you need assistance accessing your TCME resources, please contact us at info@tcme.org. And if you're not yet a member, we hope you will consider joining TCME and supporting all the work we do to bring mindful eating to you. Everyone who attends today will be eligible to receive one CPE issued from Skelly Skills, which is approved for registered dietitians. A short survey will be emailed to you following the presentation where you can obtain your certificate. The Center for Mindful Eating is a nonprofit organization that is member-supported. Your membership not only provides an extensive list of benefits, but also helps support our free programs that are open to the public, helping us to meet our mission of providing educational resources to learn more about the practices and benefits of mindful eating. Thank you for being a part of the Center for Mindful Eating. And now I'm delighted to introduce Jean Fain, who will be presenting Resolve to Make Mindful Eating Work for You and Your Clients. With the new year comes new resolve to make mindful eating work, which usually means lose weight, but also can mean get a handle on the range of eating problems. But does mindful eating really work? This is an important, albeit controversial question, especially for professionals who prescribe mindful eating strategies to their clients. In reviewing the research on the effectiveness of mindful training for binge eating, emotional eating, and weight concerns, this webinar will not only answer the question, it will help clinicians weigh the scientific evidence and reach their own conclusions on what's most effective for which clients under what circumstances. Participants will examine the controversy surrounding mindful eating, review recent research on mindfulness-based interventions for binge eating, emotional eating, and weight concerns, and weigh the scientific evidence and reach their own conclusions on what's most effective for which clients under what circumstances. Jean Fain is a Harvard Medical School affiliated psychotherapist and author of The Self-Compassion Diet. In addition to seeing individual clients in her Concord, Mass. Private practice, she runs groups and workshops on self-compassions for eating issues. She also writes about food and body image issues for newspapers, magazines, and online publications. Now I'm going to turn the webinar over to Jean. This program is being recorded and will be available following the presentation. Jean, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Stephen, for the introduction, and welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to talk about this topic with you. It's a controversial one, and that's the point. The webinar is based on an article I wrote for the January issue of the Center for Mindful Eating's Food for Thought newsletter, which you haven't gotten yet, but it will be out mid-month. The assignment was to write about a controversy in mindful eating. So I picked the most controversial topic I could think of, which is, does mindful eating really work? And I fully expected that my colleagues at TCME, that's short for the Center for Mindful Eating, Migrit Fletcher and Marcia Hednell, I expected they would reject the topic because, after all, I was bringing into question the very mission of TCME. But they're open-minded gals, and to my surprise, they encouraged me to get to the truth of the matter. And so I wrote The Whole Truth and Nothing But the Whole Truth, and you'll get to read that shortly. But in the meantime, it's a new year, and many of you or your clients or both have new resolve to make mindful eating work. And as Stephen read from the blurb, that usually means losing weight, but it could mean anything, getting a handle on whatever eating issue you've got. Which raises the question, does mindful eating really work? And so you're probably wondering, does it? I raised the question. So stay with me. I'll definitely provide some answers. And the objectives you just heard again from Stephen. So we'll look at the controversy for a minute. We will look at the research on mindfulness training for binge eating, emotional eating, and weight loss mostly. And then I'll help you weigh the evidence so you can reach your own conclusions. So that is the plan, because you want to follow through on your healthiest intentions, or you want to help your clients do that. And it really helps to understand the research and see where it leads you. First, a disclosure. If in the event that I do sell some books as a result of this webinar, sounds true, my publisher will certainly stand to benefit. That's the only disclosure. On to controversy. So what is the controversy? Now, if you're new to mindful eating, it's probably hard to imagine that paying attention to the everyday activity of eating is anything but a good thing. Because almost immediately, experience teaches you that simply by paying attention, eating is so much more pleasurable and satisfying. And over time, as you learn to eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full, you realize if you keep at it, if you keep eating mindfully, you just might get a handle on your eating, and you might even lose weight without dieting. That's the hope for many of my clients. And hello, clients out there, if you're here. I know a few of you are. But if you've been practicing mindful eating for any length of time, you've probably noticed that mindful eating is not universally embraced. In fact, there are a fair number of naysayers. Probably the most famous is this guy, Brian Wansink. He's the Cornell researcher who wrote the book on mindless eating. And what's his problem with mindful eating? Consider this quote. For most of us, mindful eating hasn't worked in the past, and it won't start working tomorrow. The problem is that monitoring every mouthful can require biblical proportions of self-control. Many of us can't do it, or we don't want to do it. So that's Brian's view. Oops, we're not ready for that yet. So, like I said, mindful eating can be controversial, if not divisive, pitting doctors against nutritionists, parents against children, therapists against their clients, and even colleagues against one another. Which is why I expect that some of you will react to the question at the heart of this webinar, much like my dearest colleague did. She said to me just yesterday, again, what do you mean mindful eating doesn't work? What do you mean mindfulness doesn't work? She wanted to know. Of course it works. So I want to ask all of you what I asked my dear client. Please listen to the research first, and then do share your reactions, because I'm very eager to hear your viewpoint. And if at any point you're just bursting with feelings about this or reactions, I will pause at various points to take questions, but feel free to type them into the box or raise your hand for Stephen so that we can keep this as a discussion. I have some things to say, but I think that the discussion will be just as important, if not much more important, than any little fact I send your way. So that's my request of you. But right now, you could make yourself comfortable, and let me tell you a little bit about the research to date, which is not conclusive, but a 2014 systematic review by Sean Kataman and his colleagues did come up with some preliminary answers. And what he did was he looked at all the research on the effectiveness of mindfulness meditation as a primary intervention for binge eating, emotional eating, and weight loss. But he only focused on the most rigorous studies of interventions that made mindfulness the core training component. So he included MBSR, which stands for mindfulness-based stress reduction, and he included mindfulness-based eating awareness training, or MBEAT. That's Jean Christeller's mindful eating training. But he excluded DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, and ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy, among other approaches. And he boiled it down to 14 really good, solid studies. And he concluded that mindfulness training really does decrease binge eating and emotional eating, but when it comes to weight loss, as a standalone intervention, it does not facilitate significant or consistent weight loss. So, let me repeat, you did hear me right. Mindfulness, great for binge eating, great for emotional eating, but all by itself was not shown to facilitate significant weight loss. Now, before you jump to conclusions, do take a deep breath and let it out. That's always a good idea in this organization. Because the findings aren't as black and white as they seem. So let me tell you about each category that they studied. We got emotional eating, and the evidence, it turns out, is actually mixed, but still encouraging. There were 5 studies on emotional eating in this systematic review, and only 2 showed significant improvements. 3 found absolutely no effect. But despite the mixed evidence, the researchers concluded that mindfulness is effective for emotional eating because it clearly is under 2 conditions. 1, when the mindfulness intervention targets emotional eating, and 2, when the participants are actually emotional eaters. Which makes sense because why would a training that had nothing to offer emotional eaters help participants decrease emotional eating if they weren't struggling with emotional eating in the first place, as was the case in those 3 studies with no effect. So in general, when it's targeted to emotional eating and people are actually struggling with emotional eating, that kind of mindfulness training is quite effective. All right, next up, binge eating. 7 studies found the same thing. Mindfulness training significantly reduces binge eating across a range of populations, including bariatric surgery patients, substance abusers who struggle with binge eating, as well as other groups. So they concluded, yes, mindfulness training is a powerful tool across the board when it comes to binge eating. So that's pretty clear. Weight loss, however, not clear at all, and yet, as discouraging as the findings on weight loss sound, they're actually far more encouraging than they seem. So, when the mindfulness training is focused on weight loss, when that's the goal of the training, it actually facilitated significant weight loss. But when the focus is something else, like stress reduction, it produced a small weight gain, not weight loss, weight gain. Very interesting, and we could talk about that when we get to questions. So that's really good to know. The the focus of the training makes a huge difference, as does the syllabus. So those studies that had the best results regarding weight loss, they also, in addition to the mindfulness training, featured nutrition education, if not some behavioral strategies for eating less or eating healthier, eating different. Now, it could be that given enough time, participants who simply learn mindfulness but didn't or don't focus on weight loss, that they would have lost weight too. That could likely be. And it could also be that those who learned mindfulness specifically for weight loss, they might lose weight and then regain it. But we don't know because these studies did not have long-term follow-up. What's clear, however, is that the systematic review raises as many questions as it answers, like, does focusing on weight loss really work? That's the topic of Marcia Hudnell's article in the Food for Thought newsletter I mentioned, and that's a really good question, and we can talk about that. Also, is a short-term mindfulness intervention long enough to facilitate significant weight loss? Eating is complicated. Weight is complicated. And so how long is long enough? That's the question. Finally, if you do resolve or you have resolved to make mindful eating work for you and or your clients, what would you want? Would you want to focus on weight loss? Or is weight loss the last thing on earth you would ever want to focus on? Think about it. And let's open this up to questions because I've already said enough provocative things for a whole day right there. Questions, reactions, comments. Stephen probably is waiting.
Yes.
With bated breath here. Yeah. Okay.
So we do have a couple of questions that are in the pipeline, but also I would urge people to click their little icon, the hand icon, and I would be happy to unmute you, and you can ask your question in person, and I'll read the questions that are typed into the question box. So the first question I have is from Carla, and she says, I thought Wansink supported mindful eating. Isn't that correct?
And the answer is no. That's not what he says in his 2006 bestseller. And he's been on the records saying exactly the quote that I read to you. So I know he was in Susan Alber's Mindful Eating Summit, which was, about mindful eating. But he has certainly disparaged this activity that we are all care about. Maybe he has mixed feelings. I can't speak for him, that's clear. But at least in the past, he has spoken up against mindful eating. That's all I can tell you. If someone else happens to know more, you can type that in or raise your hand, because I'm not Brian Wansink's voice. I just know a little bit.
Okay. Thank you, Jean. So here's sort of a comment, I guess. My 2 cents worth as a chubby RD who cares if one does not lose weight. Are we all supposed to look like Taylor Swift or Jennifer Aniston?
Yes. I'm glad you spoke up. And no, I don't think that's the point. And I hope you're not thinking that's what I'm trying to say here. I am trying to say that you need to take in this information and make sense of it according to your value system. And my value system says, no, we don't all want to look like Taylor Swift. We're all different sizes and shapes and beautiful in our own way. And no one's saying you're supposed to do anything. I'm inviting you to say, okay, so this is information. What do I want to do with it? Do I want to ignore it because it doesn't speak to me? Do I want to incorporate some of it into my thinking and my practice? Or what do I want to do? That's the invitation. So But I hear where you're coming from, and yes, we are not all aiming for Taylor Swift. I can speak for other people on this line too. I just know that.
Right there with you, Jean.
Yeah.
So here's a question from Chiara, who identifies herself as a registered dietitian with a PhD in eating disorder support group communication research.
Oh.
The question is as follows. Actually, I guess it's two questions. Did you review any studies using mindful eating as intervention for anorexia nervosa or bulimia? And two, as a focus to make mindful eating work for you, your clients, I would propose anxiety as a useful target.
Mm-hmm.
And she would welcome your thoughts.
Yes. All the systematic reviews to date have not tackled bulimia and anorexia, at least on my literature review. I can say that there are two more systematic reviews, two more recent ones. They're up on the slides now, and one was about binge eating, and that found the same thing as the Caterman review. And the other one was about mindfulness and weight loss, and that one was much more encouraging about mindfulness facilitating significant weight loss. But the flaws in the research design were too great for me to give it much weight. They included unpublished research as well as, double-blind, randomized, controlled trials, and that made me choose the 2014 systematic review as the base of this talk and the Food for Thought newsletter article. So I bet there's some studies out there, but as far as systematic reviews go, I did not see them. As far as anxiety, yes, always a good focus for our work because it certainly fuels a lot of mindless eating. I've seen that a lot with my own clients, and that would be a great study subject. You're the researcher. Maybe this is a subject you might want to look at some point. So thanks for your comments so far. How are you doing? Are some of you really upset with me for even talking about weight loss? Let's hear from you. Let's hear from other people who have different views. I'll take whatever you're thinking and feeling. It's all good.
Okay, that's, oh, wait a minute, hold on. I was just going to say we didn't have any more questions, but one just came in from Julie. As a nutrition educator working with clients to lose weight requires more than mindful eating. Weight loss is about behavior change, and mindful eating is included. Shouldn't we suggest mindful eating to be a component of weight loss?
Yes. If weight loss is your goal, mindful eating is an important component. And actually, some people lose weight simply by practicing mindfulness and mindful eating. Jean Christeller found that with her MB-EAT research. But some people actually gain weight, which is why on her more recent NIH trial of MB-EAT for weight loss, she added in the nutrition education and the behavioral interventions, and she wanted to help people achieve their goals rather than the antithesis of their goals. So it could just be one piece, but I've also had clients lose weight simply by paying more attention. So it's a choice. It's the client's choice. It's the practitioner's choice, and together they can head to. I've just lost my words. They can head in the direction that makes the most sense.
Sure, Angela sort of has a point on that as well. She says focusing only on weight loss does not seem to work. Mindfulness applied as a whole person approach seems to have more impact. Short-term interventions provide tools, but I believe ongoing support is necessary. What are your thoughts on this?
Angela, I completely agree with you. Personally, I encourage people that clients who want to lose weight to acknowledge that's their wish, but then to set aside their weight loss goals and focus on what's most important, taking good care of their whole self. And that's often really difficult when your eyes are focus on the bathroom scale. However, you can't talk people out of what they want. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But certainly, I agree with everything you said, Angela. No question about it. Focusing on the whole person is the most effective and sensible way to go. Stephen, more questions?
That's it for now.
Okay, so we're doing okay. A few feelings are here, but there's more to learn and more to discuss. So now it's your turn to notice what is proving more or less effective for you and your clients and draw your own conclusions. You're already doing that, but this is an invitation for me to welcome that process here. To help you do that, I do want to remind you there is no one right conclusion. Your conclusion really depends on your understanding of meditation, mindfulness, nutrition, psychology, behavior change, personal experience, and preferences. It might also help to hear a little bit more about my current conclusions so you can see if they fit or if yours are quite different. And I'll give you my best suggestions for making mindful eating work, and that's with quote marks around it, in 2016. So, truth be told, my conclusion is actually quite similar to Sean Katterman's conclusion in his systematic review. In my private practice, when clients practice mindfulness and mindful eating, they do predictably decrease binge eating, if not eliminate it, and decrease emotional eating. But they do not necessarily lose a significant amount of weight. Some do. Some lose 20, 30, 50 pounds, and some don't. Some gain. So the question for you is, if your clients really want to lose weight and they don't, then what do? That is the question. Now, like I said, some of my clients actively discourage clients from focusing on weight loss, and some of you might actively discourage that. And that's a fine choice. I understand where you're coming from. I agree with much of why you might do that, but well, mostly because it does get in the way of focusing on taking good care of yourself. But in my opinion, my job is not to discourage clients from their goals, or telling them what to do. My job is to encourage clients to do what I'm encouraging all of you to do, which is to weigh the evidence and reach your own conclusions. So if learning mindfulness or mindful eating is getting you somewhere other than where you want to go, I encourage you to look at what's going on from head to toe, including possible obstacles and thinking about ways around those obstacles. Sometimes getting where you're going means you need more support. You might need to see a nutritionist or a life coach or a marriage counselor, or you might want to enroll in a more intensive group experience, like my self-compassion-based eating awareness trainings. Those are weekly trainings and also weekend workshop intensives that I run. Or you might want to go to Green Mountain at Fox Run, for example, which is Marsha Hudnell's fabulous mindful eating retreat in Ludlow, Vermont. Other times, it means setting aside weight loss as a goal completely and focusing on self-acceptance. Accepting yourself just as you are, however much you weigh. Ultimately, it's your job or your client's job to decide how much to work toward change and how much to work toward acceptance. And that's what I'm thinking right now. It changes over time, so check back with me at some other webinar. I may be somewhere else, but that's where I'm at right now. Interestingly, other TCME members have slightly different conclusions. So Marsha Hudnall says, stop trying to lose weight and start focusing on feeling good, taking care of yourself. It's good self-care and other healthy habits, sleep and rest and things like that. Jean Christeller, quite different. To lose weight and end the struggle with food, she says, yes, use mindfulness and mindfully cut 500 calories a day from your general intake. Now, many people don't agree with that at all, and that is not my viewpoint. But her new book that just came out last week, The Joy of Half a Cookie, spells out why Jean has come to that conclusion. And it's definitely worth reading. It's a fabulous book. And even if you don't agree with that it's possible to mindfully cut 500 calories a day from your daily intake forever, it's definitely worth thinking about. Because she is the leading mindful eating researcher in America, and it's all grist for the mental mill here. So I know we all don't agree, and I'm wondering as I continue talking here if any more questions or reactions are coming up. We have time. I'm going to give you my best suggestions and some resources, but we certainly have time for some really hearty discussion here. So even if you're shy or reluctant, I encourage you to speak up, tell me more about your viewpoints, your reactions to the various conclusions of TCME members. I recently interviewed Jean Christeller for NPR about her new book, and I've just found it so really useful to talk through these issues with her and say, so why did you come to that conclusion? And aren't you setting people up for weight gain? To actually challenge her on her conclusions. And I'm encouraging you to do that with me and each other, because you don't all agree here. And, so if you feel like talking, fine. Otherwise, I'll keep going. And hello, Stephen.
Okay, I'm here.
Yeah.
So we do have some typed questions coming in, but if you're interested in actually speaking with Jean in person, just click the little hand icon on your taskbar, and I see Julie's put up. No, Julie does not have her hand up. Yeah, she does. Hold on. Let me try unmuting her and see if she'd like to. Julie, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Well, this is more of my observation on life, and I realize we all have different lenses that we look through life.
Mm-hmm.
It has been my experience as a registered dietitian and personally that the vast majority of people put weight back on, and I am just wondering if, like 5 to 10 years out, if Jean Christeller's research will show the same thing. I actually blame my obesity on the fact that when I was younger, I wanted boys to like me, so I would, try to get skinny, thinking they would like me, and I would always put on the weight back on and more.
Yes.
And it's really ironic because when I finally got married, I had the most wonderful husband, and I weighed 220 pounds, and he loves me unconditionally, and it's like, my God, I was really stupid when I was young, because your body shape has nothing to do with intimacy and love and a happy marriage. So I'm with Marshall. I'm in the Marshall Hudnall camp. Let's stop trying to lose weight and start focusing on feeling good.
I'm so glad you spoke up, Julie, because I, too, am really curious what will happen in the long term with Jean Christeller's research. There is no long-term follow-up with the NIH study, but I think she has another study coming out of University of San Francisco or some such California university where she has some encouraging sort of midterm results. I don't know if it's a year or two. But in the long run, most people do regain weight, and that's just so sad because all that effort for what? And so accepting your size, whatever it is, and knowing that you are truly lovable. I think that I'm so glad you spoke up, because that's the most important message of the day. So thanks for conveying that to the group here.
Thanks for letting me share.
Yeah.
Okay, we also have a question from Lynn, and she says, in your experience, do you see your client naturally making better food choices from practicing mindfulness and self-compassion?
Oftentimes, over time, yes. That doesn't mean that in the beginning it can get confusing. What does it mean to be self-compassionate versus what does it mean to be self-indulgent? And so when the restriction of is lifted, forbidden foods are reintroduced, there can be a transition period. But in general, when things are working well and there's a good alliance between the therapist and the client is motivated to practice self-compassion and mindful eating, then yes, definitely better choices, they make better choices. That's my experience. Is that your experience? Texter, other members of the webinar here?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So we have 3 Julies on our webinar today, and this is T. I see she has her hand up, so I'm going to unmute her.
This is a different Julie.
Different Julie. Julie, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, thank you for taking my question. So as a nutrition educator, I've found that mindful eating is a super great component. And just listening to all the different ideas and feelings and questions, it seems to me that it's a complex problem. And one of the complexities is something you beautifully just explained, which is long-term maintenance of weight loss. And I think a lot of people feel that way. So what I think is important with mindful eating that I have found with clients and myself is that behavior change of being mindful of what you're putting in your mouth. But in addition, are you satisfied? Have you eaten enough? Do you recognize those cues? And do you recognize the cues in your mind and in your eyes and in your nose and in your heart? All those things. Those are all mindful eating tools, but then there's some of those other things that I think we should all be mindful of, which is really working with clients on what is their lifestyle. And I don't know if you've come across this, and maybe you can speak to that, is my experiences is really looking at their lifestyle. What small incremental changes can we make for the long term to help them be on that long-term path to weight loss or weight maintenance. So some of the things that I use are evaluating their physical activity, understanding their metabolism, knowing their food culture, which however they grew up and what they're doing now is a big part of their food culture. How do they perceive food? So there's a lot of behavior and attitude is part of it too. I think all of those are so important. If you could speak to some of that, experience that, or if that's part of your program.
Well, you said it so nicely. I don't have much to say about it. So yes, you have to pay attention to the signals for hunger and fullness and taste satiety and get to know them, make friends with them. So that's a component of the training that I do. Lifestyle, we talk about it in general, taking good care of yourself and what does that mean. We don't focus particularly on exercise, but when we do talk about it, we talk about physical activity that is pleasurable and something you actually is pleasurable enough to want to do it over time, not just some sort of binge exercise program. And food messages that you got growing up, food habits you got growing up, so we look at some of that. And it's a whole kitchen sink of interventions, but to best describe what I do, it's a combination of Jean Christeller's mindfulness-based eating awareness training, not the calorie cutting part, but the mindfulness part, conflated with the best practices from mindful self-compassion, which is Chris Germer's and Kristen Neff's beautiful program for cultivating self-compassion. And then a few more things added in. Dara James is on this call today. She can't speak with her cell phone, but she's my co-leader when I do the workshops in weekend format, and she's brought in a lot of lovely exercises that she's used with her clients as well. So it's a lovely conflation of the best of all worlds of mindfulness training plus. I hope that answers your question. But the Julies are doing great here. Where's Julie number 3? I love hearing from Julies.
Well, we have a question from Catherine, which I think is relevant to the exercise discussion. She says, in my experience, exercise helps one to eat mindfully more efficiently, as it seems to help regulate hunger.
Well, that's an interesting viewpoint, and one that I don't necessarily share. It might, if it's done in the spirit of good self-care, but it also, in my experience, complicates things, especially if a client doesn't feel that they're allowed to eat more because they're hungrier from exercising. So I see a lot of clients get trapped with trying to eat the same amount whether they exercise or not, and that caloric deficit often sets them up for overeating sooner or later. So that's my experience. It's not just a benign thing. It comes with whatever baggage that the client is dragging around with them about calories in and calories out.
Okay. Angela asks, how does Jean Christeller's research and approach fit in with the treatment of eating disorders?
Well, she's done several studies, and the first big NIH study was about binge eating and binge eating disorder, and that certainly proved to be effective for reducing binge eating or eliminating it. So that was clear and positive, MB-EAT for binge eating disorder. The other research, I think early papers were about compulsive overeating. I'm still not exactly clear what the difference between compulsive overeating and binge eating is. I'm not sure. I mean, compulsive overeating isn't a diagnostic category, so I'm not sure if she made a big distinction between that and binge eating. But she's written about that and studied that some. And then I don't remember. Happily in the resources, well, no, it's not in the resources. The first study is available online, Jean Christeller's NIH study. You can Google it and you'll probably find it. If you can't find it, email me and I can send you what I have, or the citation anyway. The second study has not been published yet on weight loss, which is not an eating disorder per se, but that one's not out. And I wonder if on TCME there's a long list of studies and other articles about her research that might prove helpful. So that's another place to search for the answer to your question.
Okay, Susan has quite a long piece here. She says, as a former fat girl, the half a cookie strategy resonates with me. It's how I lost the weight and kept it off for years and years. For some of my clients, it's a very effective protocol. For others, not so much. Every body and mind requires a different approach. We are all individuals. As a coach specializing in women, weight, and self-esteem, I find that mindfulness puts the power back in my clients' hands. It helps them think before they eat, act in self-sabotaging ways. It's a great tool.
Mm-hmm. Yes, everything you say. That's great. Thanks, Susan, for that. I don't think, let me add, that Jean Christeller is saying you must only eat half a cookie. The point of the book title and the book is that when you eat mindfully, you are naturally satisfied. You eat less and you weigh less without dieting. And sometimes it's half a cookie and sometimes it's a whole cookie. But again, I should not be speaking for any of these other people. That's just my take on what she wrote in a new book.
So the first of our Julies, Julie D, typed in a response. She says, my guess is Jean Christeller had to put calorie cutting into her research or the NIH would not have funded it. I have read that the NIH grant reviewers are very pro limiting calories.
You know, I've heard that from some of my other colleagues, and I'm curious about the answer to that, but I really don't know, and that would be interesting to know. I think she's giving a webinar later this year, so you could ask her that. Yeah, I'd like to know.
So that's all the written questions I have now. Just a quick reminder that if you any of the participants today would like to be able to ask Jean a question in person, just click your hand icon and I can unmute you, or as others have done, type yours into the question box.
Okay, so we're heading on the last stretch here. Let me give you some of my best suggestions on what I've learned about mindful eating and mindfulness, and what do I want to tell you? So, for you or your clients, definitely choose a mindfulness intervention that adequately addresses your eating issue, whether it's a group or an individual therapy or nutrition counseling. If you're not sure, does this address my eating issue? You can ask the instructor or the therapist or the nutritionist, does this address my eating issue? And if weight loss is important to you, let me add that you would do better with something like mindfulness-based eating awareness training than mindfulness-based stress reduction, which has been shown to facilitate weight gain. So the focus of the intervention, again, makes a difference. That said, if you're really excited about a particular mindfulness intervention or learning mindfulness from a particular person, but it doesn't adequately address your eating issue, you might ask yourself, what additional supports might I need to succeed? A nutritionist, a trainer, a mindful eating retreat. What else do I need? Because you don't have to get it all in one-stop shopping, but you can piece it together with various components. So that's the first. The second point is, if you are interested in a group training, make sure the participants share some or all of the same concerns. So if you've sworn off dieting, which many of us have, it isn't helpful to join a diet club where everyone's focused so much on weight loss and restriction. Pick a different group with more like-minded people. Then you're going to have to practice patience, or I highly recommend it. Change is never as fast as you would like, you might have noticed. I have never met a client who said, you know, I'm making much too much progress too quickly. That just doesn't happen. So when it comes to weight, change will likely be less dramatic and quick with mindfulness as opposed to, say, a crash diet. That's good news, actually, but many people are not so excited about that, which is why I encourage you to encourage your clients or yourself, you know, practice patience, because it takes as long as it takes to get where you're going. My best suggestion is you got to have enough support. If you're serious about making mindful eating work, in quotes, whatever that means to you, good supportive company definitely makes the work much easier and more effective and more fun. There are tons and tons of study about the benefits of positive support. So bottom line, get as much support as you need to succeed. You've got the resource list. It's short. It's just a few things that came up in this talk today. You can learn more about my groups if you like. There are a few more spots left in the weekend workshop in January, so if you're interested and you want to know more, just let me know. Green Mountain at Fox Run, you got the link for that. You got a couple books, my book and Jean Christeller's. And then you have the 3 systematic reviews that I mentioned. The first one is the one I spent the most time on by Sean Kahneman. The second one is the Supporting Binge Eating systematic review. And the last one is that review on mindfulness for weight loss. So those are the resources. And as you know, you can get continuing education credits. You'll be getting an email with a link, so that's coming your way if it applies to you. And if there are more questions, now is your last chance to ask, because we're just about out of time. But I don't want to shortchange this discussion. I think it's been a really lovely and interesting discussion, and if you've been sitting on a question for some time now, this is one time to ask. Otherwise, if you got other questions, technical questions or other questions, you can always email the Center for Mindful Eating, or you can email me, and you can do that through my website. I welcome questions and reactions after the fact. So, Stephen, where are we?
Okay, Jean. Well, thank you so much. A wonderful presentation. Right now, we don't have any more questions.
Okay, great.
We still have a few people with us, so I'm going to invite them to either raise their hand by clicking the hand icon where they can discuss a question with you in person, or just type it right into the question box.
And I can think if there's anything else I want to say while people are typing or thinking. What else do I want to say? I want to say this is the first time I worked with Stephen, and it's good to have him. I guess we are losing Michelle, who's been a wonderful supportive feature in this organization for a good long time. So going to miss Michelle. But Stephen is right there with us, and this is working out quite well. So thank you to Stephen today.
You're welcome.
And anyone else still typing?
No, I think we're pretty much done. So I'm just going to suggest that at this point we will be ending this webinar entitled Resolve to Make Mindful Eating Work for You and Your Clients. Thank you so much, everyone who's participated, and thank you for your support of the Center for Mindful Eating.